Thank you for recording, Melissa. And let me just tell Jeremy.
I don't think Doreen can hear. Doreen, can you hear? She cannot hear us. So can everybody hear me or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Doreen cannot hear us, so I would ask her to go off and join again. Hello, can you hear? Doreen, can you hear now? No? Okay.
Can you dial in from another number, Doreen?
She said she's going to try another her phone, sorry.
Okay. Can you hear, Doreen? Thumbs up. Okay. Can you speak?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sorry,
Yes.
guys. Okay.
Now we have two of you.
Just one now, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Two boxes, one face. Okay. Still no Jeremy. Jeremy, if you're out there, say something.
Can we not start until we have Jeremy? Don't we have a quorum?
Yeah, but I feel like this is an important topic of which he's a.
Right.
I'd rather just wait.
Me too.
Oh, okay. Hi everyone. I'm trying to help Jeremy right now. I'm on the phone with him.
Can he just dial in on his phone? That's what I did.
Well, while we're waiting for Jeremy, I'll just share one thought. I've been seeing some stuff and hearing some stuff of people around town kind of attacking whatever group was in the opposite group of however they voted. And certainly can understand how one side or the other may be frustrated by it. I think what we're really trying to do here is get to a place where we can figure out how to advance, obviously, number one, the children's interests. We are here to create a supportive environment for kids. And I think that's everyone's goal, whether you voted yes or no. If I could just ask people to kind of refrain from any sort of attacks, personal attacks, I think we're going to get to a good place. I think this is possibly just a great learning experience for everyone involved. And so be patient, be frustrated if you want to. It's certainly understandable, but please refrain from kind of reaching out and attacking each other.
Doug, sorry, excuse me for 1 second. Jeremy's in, so we all set.
Okay, great. Okay, so what we're trying to do today is, number one, just get logistical information out and make sure everyone just understands the board. Everyone on the board understands where are we and where we're going. So I will pass it over to Bill and Maureen to do that. And then, we want to start talking about what does a revised budget look like? What are some places, or the next budget that we put up look like? And what are some places we want to look at and discuss as we're getting there. So with that, I'll pass it over to Bill and Maureen to just kind of walk us through high level where we are, where we're going, and then the board can dig in on some conversations.
Okay, thanks, Doug. And I thank Doug for your spirit there. The letter that went out to the community about 90 minutes ago, the very end of it, and I've already received some thank yous, asked us to be forward-looking, supportive, and all the rest through this process. I actually started today in a special way with the high school. I was able to spend 2 class periods with groups of students on a special day of lessons. And my topic was, you want to be a superintendent, huh? And so, but we went through a bunch of exercises, but in that room, there was this collective spirit of how do we work together? And they're the ones most affected, for all the way from our kindergartners to the 12th graders, those on internship. So anything we can do through this difficult process, which it is, remain supportive, constructive, and supportive, that's vital. Maureen, do you want to screen share on the document, or want me to? You want me to do that?
Do you mind doing that, or I just have like a million tabs open? So do you want me to go back into the document?
Let me go get to the screen share. And while I'm doing that, let me just do a little bit of housekeeping. You may have seen in the note that we do have a number of affidavit ballots and touched, and we're working. Are you all still there?
Yeah, well, we missed that, what you said.
I was speaking to the affidavit ballots and absentee ballots that are here. We're working with close legal counsel on how to handle those correctly. We will need to have a meeting of the board we can have it this Tuesday. It needs to have a quorum of the board there, plus, in this case, the 2 candidates for the Board of Ed need to be there physically present when those affidavit ballots and absentee ballots are opened and then canvassed. When that's done, that will be our final official count. We have no idea how that might influence the final count here. So as I put in the letter, we are proceeding with the assumption that this budget was voted down, and we have to proceed on the calendar that Maureen and I are about to share with you, proceeding on how to now handle the budget being voted down. But I do want everyone to know, in full transparency, there are these affidavit ballots and absentee ballots, which, as legally correctly handled, in a meeting Tuesday, we'll set the date, but we would ask the board to be flexible to be there, and then the 2 candidates who ran for the board to be there when these are what's called technically canvassed. And then those votes would be added in to the count on either the yay or nay side for the budget. I cannot speak.
Bill, can I ask
Go
you how
ahead.
many can I ask you how many ballots there are?
We can't speak to that legally at this
Okay.
point because we have to
Got it.
determine which ones arrived correctly in the building. And once we know that exactly, that's what in that meeting we can discuss, because by then with legal guidance, we'll know exactly which ones arrived correctly, legally, and which ones thus can be canvassed.
I would like that you share the legal protocol that should go into the process. That is quite important to me.
Yes, we'll do that. We're working with Attorney Volpe on this with Keen and Bean, and she's providing us guidance almost by the minute all day. And then I'll have her write something up so that's clear for the board and the community on how we're proceeding. But even the letter that was written, she reviewed the top part of that where we refer to this to make sure it's accurate.
I want to also add that I would want it for us to differentiate between best practices that we can legally adopt based on our collective decision versus what the New York State laws are concerning it. So I want for us to make sure we delineate it, because sometimes the assumption of practices that we have as a board, others may misconstrue it as it being something that is the state law, and it's not. So I just want us to make sure we delineate those two.
Yeah, well, to be crystal clear, Suzanne Volpe is working within the letter of the state laws that it's required for elections in the situation with affidavits and absentee ballots. So I'll have her write up exactly what the state law is requiring, and thus we're following that. So it's not a matter of interpretation or best practice. It's a matter of abiding by the law. And I'll make sure, in deference to all the board members and all the residents of Hastings, that it's clear on how we're handling this. So let me go to a screen share here. You should see something right now. Let's see how it shows up on my screen, then your screen. I'll go to slideshow so you're only seeing it. Are you now seeing something in big letters saying budget 22-23? Yes? Okay. So Maureen, do you want me to walk through this quickly, or do you want, and then backfill?
Sure,
or do you want
you can go through it.
Okay. So we will be efficient with you. We just need to set the stage for you factually as a board to understand where we are. So if the proposed budget is defeated, the district may do one of the following pieces. And I'm not one to read slides, but I will read these. You've been through my presentations. You've never, ever seen me read a slide. I'm about to do it, so we're all very clear. You can resubmit the defeated budget, allowing enough time for legal notices. We'll get to that schedule in a second. It actually was also laid out in my letter that went out to the community. You can submit a revised budget, allowing enough time for legal notice.
Bill, if you can hear us, you were stuck there for a while.
Yeah, I was bouncing. There's some network problem here, I guess, in the buildings. They keep bouncing me out. Can you see me and hear me now? You can see the screen in the share.
Yes.
If the resubmitted revised budget is defeated, the BOE must adopt a contingent budget. The timeline is here. This is what you saw in the letter earlier today, modified a wee bit. I tightened it down just for the spacing in the letter. The May 31 date, that we actually have a range of dates, but given we have to post in a newspaper per the state, and given we post in papers that have a weekly publication date, that May 31st date is the last possible date for us to use to then post publicly within that time frame. So our deadline to come up with the final budget to be put forth is May 31st. The rest of the dates here should be clear to you. I don't know, Maureen, if you want to add anything in this sequence.
No, but as Bill said, similar to our regular budget vote, much of it, is laid out to allow for a certain amount of days between hearings and what has to, again, as you know, we do have to mail a notification home with all the budget details. So those dates are pretty tight in there. So again, we want to make sure that everything gets home timely, so that June 10th date is critical to get all the materials out from the district.
A contingent budget is explained here just in broad terms. Maureen, do you want to kind of pick this up here? Elaborate on what?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously there's a little bit, there are some additional details but this really covers the most critical pieces. And again, the number one piece, if in fact we were at a contingent budget, that caps your levy that you raised, which would be this year's limit, to that next year. So basically it means you cannot increase the levy, which currently the budget that was defeated yesterday was approximately about almost 1.4 million of an increase in the levy. So again, that would not be allowable. Again, the BOE does have some discretion in determining what constitutes ordinary contingent expenses. For the most part, most things are pretty prescribed, but there may be if there was like an item or two of, I'm just saying, like a piece of equipment that you felt needed to be purchased, that you would have the ability to possibly then within the contingency budget flag those type of items. And then again, another piece of the equation when considering a contingency budget is the administrative component of the contingency budget must not exceed the lesser of the percentage in the previous component. So basically what it means is that you take the current admin budget, which again, what we consider admin is not our, there's certain expenses that are considered admin by the state. That's not, we don't create that determination. Those budget codes are determined by state. And that portion of the budget, the percentage that it is relative to the instructional budget this year, cannot be exceeded for next year. So basically, if it were even a percentage of point over, you would have to reduce even further that the administrative budget would have to be reduced to ensure that that wasn't the case. So, again, we can talk more about that, and I can show you the formula just so you can kind of really see the numbers. But just these are again just items right out of the state guidance we wanted to share with you, and we can kind of get into the details. As an example, for us, that would be close to $200,000 using that formula.
And as I shared in the letter earlier today, overall, this could result in about a 1.4 million reduction overall from the proposed budget if we had to go to the contingent budget.
Correct.
The one that you may have seen earlier, though, is we need to begin building that contingent budget right away, even if the board's saying it doesn't have an interest in that. Given the timing on the budget vote, let me go back to that slide. If you see the budget vote is June 21st, and if we learn then that the second vote is failed, we automatically have to go to the contingent budget. So at this point, it would only be wise to be building a contingent budget. So if we fail on June 21st, we know what we have to do instead of their rushing to figure it out. So that's why you saw the explanation of the need to be, we don't want to go to a contingent budget. That's our recommendation from your administrators, but we need to be smart and be ready to go there if that second vote fails. But you as a board have the right legally to go to a contingent budget earlier if you want. We're not recommending that to you. Let me come back here to action options to consider, and then we'll be done. First is you could put the existing proposed budget back up for a vote. You have full right to do that. You could see here the need to then communicate actively on facts and any misconceptions that may be out there, and to push hard for greater voter turnout. A lot of people came out, but maybe there's a feeling more should come out. And there was a typo there. It was a 17 vote margin, not 15. I guess I was being optimistic when I wrote this. Second is you could put a slightly modified budget back up for a vote to say, you as a board have heard enough feedback to say there are places for modifications here. And there may be some things that attracted attention that affected the larger vote, and you may decide that's something you want to adjust and address. And then you see a repeat on the communication issue and the voter turnout issue. And then lastly, you could put up a very significantly modified budget back up and look at all of those options. So those are your options. Left off here is you could go right to doing the contingent budget, and that is in the state provisions. We again are recommending you not do that because that will be quite a severe budget for Hastings. It roughly, and Maureen, you can check me, roughly 1.4 million in reductions from the current proposed budget, and that would be very, very severe for the quality of schooling. So, and then lastly, let me make a very clear point. Board members, as you know, any of us also as administrators and employees, we cannot say how to vote on the budget, but we can certainly encourage voting on the budget. So that's where what you see here is fair game for the process. So there may
Bill,
be questions on these slides, otherwise I could stop sharing at this point, just so we have a better view of each other.
Yeah, I have questions on.
Okay.
Sorry, Doreen, go first. Sorry, go.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt Bill too. So I just want to be clear. Did you say 1.3 million or 1.4 million reduction? What was that reduction?
It's like 138 or so. I have
138. Okay, so
yeah, something.
1.4.
It's less than 1.4, but it's like in between the two.
Right. So I want to be clear. So that is the amount in order to be where we are today, but recognizing that some of the things that are in the budget that were driving the increase, such as the bond payment and the teachers, or not just teachers, but employee salaries, all of the stuff that goes into the salaries and the retirement and all of that, those have to be paid. So to be clear, in order to get a approximately $4 million reduction, we have to figure out ways to do that could involve programming or activities or something. Am I clearly thinking about this, or am I incorrect in my thinking?
Yeah, Maureen, you want me to answer that?
And was I clear in my comments?
Yes, you're very clear, and
okay.
you may recall during the budget process, at your request, we brought to you items to consider that were clearly in big print, not recommendations. Still, there are some people within the district who heard those as recommendations. That's normal. We understood that. But it's that level of type of cut. And this is something we want to talk about in more detail, so I don't want to push into that detail yet, but it would be program. It would be class size. It would be, electives up at the high school and not modest electives. They'd be courses actually with any smaller than 15, which could be some of your AP courses and all the rest. So the impact on the core programming to get to that 1.3 and change, I just rounded to 1.4, it would be very significant.
Okay, thanks, Bill. I just wanted to make sure. And I just want to take 1 second to say, before we go on, is that I've seen and heard from other people that there's been a thought that maybe I didn't show up at the budget meeting because I didn't want to vote, or I didn't agree with it and I wanted to vote no. I just want it to be clear on the record. I didn't show up at the budget vote meeting because I had COVID. And the only thing I wanted to avoid was giving my colleagues COVID. So had I been there, I would have voted yes for the budget. So that's officially on record. And Doug knew that I wasn't going to come in. Doug and I had discussed that if there was a tie, if there had been a 3-3 tie, I was watching and we would have called me and I would have given my yes vote. But it didn't come to that because it wasn't a 3-3 tie. But so just to put to rest the community members who are saying that I didn't approve of it, it's not true. I did approve of it. I had COVID. That's why I wasn't there. Thanks, Bill. Sorry to interrupt.
So Dr. McKenzie, I just want to check if you would like to complete everything, because I have a couple of both specifics and philosophical understandings.
Can I say, just butt in for a second? It's almost 5 o'clock. Let's talk about the budget. Let's get to the details.
please don't interrupt me. Doreen spoke at length, and I gave her my lead to do it when I was supposed to speak. So don't do that, okay? Okay, so if it's 5 o'clock, I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about now. I sent an email out. I gave a very thoughtful work on. I worked hard, and I want to say that, and I give a lot of thought to this process, and I know I mean there's a white elephant in the room. Myself and Jeremy are the individuals that said no. I would say that there should be, as humans, when a marginalized group, which is myself and Jeremy, have said no to something, the human thing to do is to ask why. And it's not about any human personal. We shouldn't make it about us as individuals. This is not about us. It's about our kids. It's about our kids that we all care for, and we may be caring for all of our kids differently. Professionally, we have our leadership team, administrators, and teachers caring differently. Within that professional caring, even there are disagreement on how that care should look like between administrators and teachers. We all know that. We do that in our separate workspaces. So we should not be angry right now or upset that a yes or a no vote means that everything is a standstill. And I typed something out that I want to honor Maureen. And I want it to go on record, and I'm very happy that we are recording. And Alex, yes, we don't have time, so I'm going to try to be succinct because I like to type out my I talk a lot, I know that, so I'm going to try to be succinct. So let me pull this up because I was trying to ask a procedural question. So let me do this. So this is what, and I've posted this, I've emailed a lot of the individuals in the school already, and I decided to post it. It's my personal information, and the post was not representing any communication I've had with any of the board members. I've not communicated with any of the board members to draft this information that I have. I put there based on their input, so to speak. This is my work and thought process. I want to share it that way. So Maureen, this is what I want to say to you, that I know that you serve and have led for several years, 25 years, and no vote has never been on your plate. I respect and trust and will always continue to respect your skills and insight as an accountant in this work process. And I know the hard work of an accountant only because my mom is an accountant. But this is what I'm saying, that it's not fair to Maureen that the budget work is somehow heavily just connected or hanged upon her, because that in itself is what I believe is the problem. So that at the end of the day, we cannot make it a vote that is yes or no only because Maureen might not have done the due diligence that she was supposed to do for a year's budget. It is the collective board that was supposed to do the work. It is our budget to adopt. For me, that is the issue that I want to point out. And I would ask that when we reconvene to work on the budget, we give it that due diligence to do so and not make it about us. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just kind of share kind of where we are. I'll share an opinion, and I want to get everyone else's opinion on this as well. So I have an opinion that I think there's extreme value in getting to a 7-0 vote on this budget and finding a way to do that. We may be able to get there, we may not be able to get there. And so a question I have for the people who had no votes is, what would it take for you to be able to vote yes? And so if we could start there, that may be a good place to open the conversation, right? It's not really some of the things you request may or may not want to do collectively, but I'd love to throw that out to the people who voted no to just better understand what would it take to get you to yes.
Hi guys, we're back in our boxes. So yeah, I would. I'll get to that, Doug. That makes sense. I'm not. It's definitely an opinion whether or not the next one should be 7-0 or not. But you know, I think that the administration brought forth a budget, and the board weighed in. There were times where there were a lot of different voices expressing concerns about the size. And at every meeting, I think the administration made adjustments. And at every meeting, they defended what their priorities were. And I think the board voted by a clear majority to send it to our residents to see what they thought. So I'm definitely thinking the same sort of things as you, Doug. You know, how does the board want to proceed? Because a razor thin no vote, or maybe it's a razor thin yes vote by the time we vote the absentees. So I don't know exactly if that's a clear plan. What would it take to get 6-1? What would it take to get 7-0? And certainly the other ideas are what would it take to get it to a budget that the board feels is 90% likely to pass. Because contingency budget has a lot of negative connotations. So, you know, I don't feel like I've ever dominated the board and that you had to get my vote on something. You know, we do work as a consensus, but I would answer that. I mean, I would have preferred a discussion on, you know, how the board in general wants to approach it. Does the board want to try to make small changes or significant changes? Does the board feel that, you know, a small tweak is all it takes? And then as Bill laid out, you know, increase in voter participation. I think we had about 20% of adult residents vote. You know, 1,300 votes out of about 6,000 adults. So there's a lot of ways to go for it. That's way too much. If you wanted a quick one, I think we're looking at a $4 million increase over what we're expected to spend this year. I think anything that was $1 million less would get my yes vote, but that's not the way to approach a budget. The way to approach a budget is what can we cut without hurting the town, the community. The only other thing I would say is that we're using the word cut, and that's cut from a proposed budget that maybe failed. The contingency budget would be an increase over the spending we just did this year. A contingency budget would be about a $2 million increase over what we just have seen in our last board meeting about what we're going to spend. So we can use the word cut, or we can use the word where would just slow the growth. But the number I'd be looking at would be about, if you want a ballpark number to get going, I think if this board put in its efforts to come close to a budget that was $1 million smaller, so 56 million was proposed, I think 55 million would respect the no vote that the town possibly just gave. And I think 55 million would be something that the community should support. And I'm sorry again for talking so long.
Can I say
check a number there though?
I didn't have a number, Doug. I just said 55 million.
No, I said I want to check a number you used. $2 million over what we spent this year. What? Just Maureen, can you help us understand that number?
I'll do that,
because we have other revenues coming in. So even if you were not to increase the levy, our budget is moving by over 3 million. So what about 2 million of that is being supported by increased well, a little less than 2 million is being supported by increased state aid and appropriations and appropriated fund balance, and the remainder was going to the levy. So cutting the levy would still have a $2 million growth in your budget.
And Doug, what I was referring to was that in our last two board meetings, we've had a projected amount of what we were going to expend for this school year. As you know, we're in May.
Right.
So where our budget and our levy were based on our last budget of almost 53. It's been projected that what we actually spent this year was 52. So I was working on a 52 to 54 feels like a $2 million increase. Right now, it's been very clear and very consistent. We are talking budget to budget. Budget to budget was 53 million to 56 million. I keep referring to what we actually spent to run the schools this year. We passed a $53 million budget last year, but we only spend about 52 of it, giving us this $1 million good governance, flexibility, and sometimes it's just, as I think Maureen has told us, revenues come in a little higher or expenditures come in a little smaller. So I see 52 to 56 as a budget vote that just got voted down was $4 million more than we expect to spend in this current school year.
Can we orient around a different set of numbers? Because, you know, it's so what you're saying basically is $1 million cut, right? And let's talk about our per pupil costs in Hastings. Our per pupil costs in Hastings on Hudson are about $2,000 less than the Westchester and Putnam district average. So by a conventional metric measured against all the other districts we run a lean district. So let's talk about that number. Where, you know, that would imply that we run a lean district. Would you stipulate that or not? And if it's so, if we do run a lean district, where do we find $1 million of savings? And furthermore, because we're obligated to pay the bond, and 75% of that increase is obligations, that $1 million has to come out of what? Let's hear some concrete facts. If we just talk about numbers, it's like asking how long a piece of string should be. Let's talk about what those numbers mean in reality in the budget.
Okay. Sorry, Alex, are you done? Okay. So, Alex, as you know, and most people know this, you give a lot of philosophical talk, you know. So I think that let's allow it's okay. Let me say this first. I like your direct question, but we also have to understand that when the body of knowledge that all of us are working with is disjointed, it doesn't allow for, you may know something that you may assume that some others know, that is what is shaping their decision or shaping where they are falling. Now, this is about the community. 7 of us did the vote, is done. All of us could have said yes, and this would have still been the results. And so it wouldn't be about us. And all of us could have said no, or whatever. It could have been the other way around. And the community. So it's about the community, and the community, they are here right now. And I followed the conversations in Facebook. I observed. I'm a nerd scientist. All we do is observe. And I could see the disjointed understanding that the community had. And yes, I'm just new on this board for 1 year, but this is not a new work for me. I had asked before I joined the board, that I would ask for us to open a committee called the Communications and Engagement Committee. We did that. And that's when we had, who do you call and who do you contact? I believe that when it comes to budget, when the community has to fully be participatory in understanding where their money is going to go, this is America. Their money needs to go, everyone wants to know where their money is going, especially when everybody has their monetary priority. And we owe it to the community to be exhaustive in our deliberations and in a way that they can receive it, not in the way that not in a way that we think we understand it.
So,
And
so let's be exhaustive. Let's be exhaustive. Let's
so yeah,
let's get concrete. Let's
I
get
know.
concrete.
Listen, Alex, stop interrupting me. I'm not here for you to interrogate me. I'm here for us to deliberate. This is the dysfunctionality of our school board. Don't set me on something. We are recording this, please. This is the dysfunctionality of. I don't have any problem with any of the teachers, administrators, anybody. We've lost how many superintendents? So it's the board problem. This is not. I said it by saying it's not Maureen's problem. It's not anybody else's. It's not the teachers' problem. The teachers are still pleasant and nice to our kids. They chose this career. Dr. Makesi chose this career. Everybody chose this career. We are volunteering, and we may be volunteering based on several varied reasons. So let's work and don't just think this is going to be interrogative process. This is what sorry, Doug. To answer your direct question, this is a one sentence answer to your question, and I have sent this to the whole community, and it's on Facebook. I have underlined it, and I'm saying this. I will give a big yes vote, even if the proposed budget to the community stays the same, and I'm putting this for the record, stays the same, okay? Or even increases till 6%. Yes, I said it, and let me tell you why. It depends on what it is that we are doing. That is why I run, and that's why I'm here volunteering. None of us have time. None of us have time, and we are volunteering this because there's a reason, which is a lot of work. So this is what I would. So this is my straight, direct answer. Jeremy is the number person. I respect him, and I will let him work with those numbers. But I will tell you what I'm looking for, and then Jeremy, I would trust Jeremy, who is a financial guy who worked on Wall Street from MIT. I would trust him to give those number details. So that being said, can I go ahead and give you what I'm looking for within the budget philosophically? Would that be fine, or somebody else wants to speak?
No, please, Damaris. What's the budget you'd be looking for?
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to read it because I have to be succinct because of the time limitation. So budget, I am being laser focused on our kids, and I want us to be laser focused on our kids when we are doing the budget. The emphasis of our school budget should be the direct education of our kids, all of our kids, including the special education kids. I am a special education mother. The only child I have is a special ed mother. So I am very much interested. If I have to walk barefoot with my feet bleeding, I would do it. Only to give all my money to help my child proceed. So I want to make sure that whatever we are doing, we are in this budget decision, programs serve as the conduit to the direct education of our kids. It should not be our first option to cut it. I feel like the community is being, if I wasn't on the board, I feel threatened by this board. The school will be using the culture of cutting programs and services to get me to keep giving my money. That's how I will feel. And some individuals in the community have verbally, in several ways, communicated that to me, that the culture is a quick threat to the cutting of programs and services. All the money that we give to the school is the only thing. If you are making a budget in your own home, okay, and again, we the board, I suppose. So I'm talking to us, the board, not the leadership team, not the teachers, not the administrators. We are the board. If we your own home as parents, you are making your budget. You have your accountant that would help you with your budget. And you want to buy a Mercedes or whatever, would you starve your kids and get that Mercedes? Where is your priority? So that, let's cut programs and services. Let's stop that. Because is there a way that we can, like Jeremy said, gradually do certain things, pause certain things, not programs. Let's stop using programs as a tool to get what we want from the community. This is me talking to the board, not the leadership team, because we adopt the budget for the community to vote on. So that's my emphasis. So let me just end there.
Can I just follow up on that? So I hear you, I think. So the point is, what do you want to take out so that you don't affect the programming? That's what we need to hear from you all.
I would do it the other way. I want to hear from the 7 of us as to whether or not they want a board influenced budget, or whether or not we want to continue where we give guidance to administrators and administrators come to the board.
Well, Jeremy,
So,
my understanding is that we asked for that a while back because we know this is a big increase. They originally came over 6 million, and from that feedback brought it down to
Over 6%. Over 6%.
Over 6%. Yeah, over 6%. I'm sorry, over 6%. They brought it on to 5.6%. and made those reductions the best they could. They stopped at this percentage increase because they felt this was the best we could do for given our restrictions on money. They cut as much as they could without affecting the running of the school. So that's why 5 of us said yes to that budget, because we felt they made it as lean as they could while maintaining the levels that we expected. So that's why we keep turning it back to you all, because they did that job already in preparation.
Okay.
And
that's fair.
So where do you guys want to go? They
Well, I've said it at like every public meeting, and I don't mind repeating it.
Please do.
But I believe, we have to be careful not to be an overactive board, and we have to move as a consensus. I believe the administration brought the budget down in response to board comments, but I don't think we stopped because it was as lean as it could get to. I think it stopped because there were a majority consensus of board members who were in favor of sending it to the community at this level. So I'll repeat my 3 areas, my 4 areas, but I don't feel like board members are supposed to play the role of administrators. And very few of us have experience in the public school setting the way Maureen, Melissa, and Bill do.
So I'm just sorry, Gigi, I am going to interrupt you quickly because they did give us a list of things that we could then take out.
It was a list that they didn't recommend.
That's correct. That's the best they could do if we want to take out more, they threw it back to us saying, these are the other things that you can look at. We've cut everything we can think of. Here is what would be next in line according to us. And there was modified sports, there was busing, and there were a few other things listed. So that's their prioritized list of possibilities. And that's what you guys need to look at if you want to look at chopping another $1 million from the budget.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
Can I just say on to Allison's point, Jeremy, too, is that if we're gonna, if you're saying that we want to be an admin-led board, that we're not leading, that the admin is leading, I feel like that's what happened. The admin gave us the budget that they thought was the most fair budget. They're not trying to make it high. That's why I voted yes. I would have voted in public yes, because they did the best they could. So that's why to ask the admin what they would take out, I think is really an impossible task for them, because nobody's going to be happy. So if they say, well, I gave you that list of things, so right away we're just going to cut modified sports. then you have people who are upset that they cut modified sports. I mean, they know what they could take out. The admin-led budget told us what it should be.
Correct.
That's why I feel like if we're not taking that and we need to cut things, then automatically it's a board-led budget. That's
Correct.
the way it has to be.
Gotcha. So let me put my 4 areas out there because I'm not trying to avoid anything here. I believe the 4 areas where this town might see a budget they could approve would be if there was less money spent on out-of-district busing for non-special ed students who are going to private schools. I believe another category would be professional development for teachers, where we're bringing in outside consultations and programs that haven't had seriously well reviewed from the teachers, who very often have mixed reviews of professional development. I believe another area where we could see savings, not cuts, but savings, is it by class size increases. And I had a 4th thing, but it's gone. What I want this board to do is to listen to what Bill just presented. Bill gave us the basics. If this board believes that they want to send the exact same budget back, they can discuss that. It lost by 20 votes, possibly, with 80% of the people not voting. Does this board, yeah, hey Spam, how you doing? Does this board want to do large cuts or large savings? Or does this board want to do minor savings? The 4 areas are out there if you want it. Another huge area is that every year we have an appropriated balance in the 6 figures. Another area we decide is how much we're going to take from our reserves to pay for this budget. So the administration's been fabulous. They've adjusted in flexible ways. We made the tax increase 3.1% while the budget was going up by 6% or 5.5%, by using increased funding from Albany and by using our reserves. Next year, we would have had to start with that number again. So if you want to know where I would cut it, I think we need to look at out-of-district busing. We need to look at class sizes. We need to look at professional development. We need to look at trimming our budget down so we don't have a $1 million appropriated balance to use every year. That's only a 1-year help. It would push it back a year for any other class size increases by attrition. I don't think we need to try to get a negative idea here about modified sports, drama, or arts or clubs. And I think there's a lot of discussion, but I don't know where this board wants to go. Do you want to send back the same budget? Do you want to send back a small budget, a small change, or do you want to send back something in the 500,000 to $1 million? Do you want to send back a budget like Doug said that's 7.0, or do you want to send back another one that might be 6.1? I think that's fair points to discuss as well, and it doesn't all have to be done tonight.
Correct. Correct.
Can I just point out something that, you know, the 3 things you mentioned, professional development, well, let's say the 2, professional development and the out-of-district busing for non-special ed kids, that would be a small fraction of the $1 million that you're looking for. Small fraction. And the other part of that, the vast majority of it, if we're talking about class sizes, you'd be talking, in order to make $1 million, you'd be talking about firing multiple teachers in order to make that $1 million.
Okay. Sorry, Alex, you done? So this is the issue that I have with we talking about firing teachers when we are, and also talking about cutting programs. But I'll say upfront that I'm not in favor of increased class sizes. No, I'm not. I wouldn't want us to do that. I want to echo what Doreen said, that this was a leadership-led budget when we, the board, are supposed to adopt the budget. So I also agree with Doreen on that point. What I would think, like I said upfront, even if we sit down, which I know we can do today because there are 600 line items or more that our budget entails. And so all the ones that we are mentioning are recommendations that the leadership team threw at us. I personally, when I looked at the recommendations, everybody has different tastes to what they are looking at in a budget, or if you think of it as food. So when I shared this with my colleagues, when I saw some of the recommendation, it's something that I call the broccoli dish, and committee members that spoke with me after I had said no wanted to know what my take was, and I tried to be transparent as much as possible. So for me personally, those suggestions, I felt I saw some of it, and this is not in any way saying anything about things. This is a leadership team desperately trying to figure things out, and Maureen working hard to say, okay, where can I cut? She's not supposed to be the brain only behind a budget for a whole school district. No. So
but Dr. Lai, I just want to say, I just want to be clear on that point, just because everyone, like the entire budget and the numbers that are given by the building leaders through the chair people. So when there are discrepancies or things, much of it, I have to say, there's a lot of ebb and flow in special education. They try to plan the best, and you have children that go in and out of districts. So you will see like a $400,000 sometimes where we potentially don't spend money. I just want to talk about like sometimes those appropriate balances, but I just want to be clear because I don't know the students nor their needs. So when things are put on paper, and Bill and all of us, like, we do get it from the program leaders. I just want to be clear, like, I don't come up with like, I think I'll throw, X amount in the OT line. Like, all of those are based upon the line items. Now they, of course, with the process, they're also trying to project, and because the cost of services, and it's fine, and we don't want to, I'm just using that as an example. There's many examples beyond special ed we can speak to, class placements, 504s, different, just could be really anything, quite frankly. But I will say that, it is, in fairness to everyone involved, and I'm using our building leaders, I think people really try to do their best. And I think everyone's always concerned, oh my goodness, if I'm not like, capturing all these things, and what if a child needs them? They just they want to make sure we have all the information. So I would say that we probably all are like ultra conservative in some of those thinkings, because we never want to get ourselves where we can't provide for children. But that's all I'll say on that. But I just want to be clear that it is a collective effort, and anytime we have discussions, we do bring the building leaders into it, because they would be the most appropriate people. They know their buildings, they know their programs, they know their students, and those recommendations come through them. I mean, yes, we do tally it up and see where it flows, but quite frankly, it would be difficult for me or anybody to decide whether we think that it's a legitimate budget number, or if a child's going to go to a particular school. That's beyond, anything that we would do. So that I just want to be clear. I know it's difficult. People see line items, and people come and go, and people are with the district and they may leave and their replacement may be lost. I mean, these are not things we can predict. And when you have ebbs and flows in teachers, you can see swings in one teacher of $70,000. So it isn't a perfect science. And yes, I've been here where we've benefited, if you want to call it benefit, from having some savings, and other times where numbers come in the other direction. So I just wanted to acknowledge, Dr. Lang, your comment, because I more so not to deflect, but just to say, of course, it would be ridiculous to think that I sit here and dictate to the principals at the building what they have.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That is a very appreciated input. And I would just following up on that part. So I just want, what I want to say is that if we could work from a philosophical place, so we have our board committees, right? And one of it is facilities. Now, can I ask, so let me ask to get everything clear in my head. And this is really actually based on the interrupted comment of Alex. So we are supposed to end at 6. Is this first meeting just a way to do a cursory deliberation, or are we supposed to now say, okay, this is what we should look at and be specific with things and that like that? Because I haven't had the conversation that I want to have that would necessitate that kind of readjustment and reshuffling. So if I'll use special education as an example, okay, because that's right of that, and I'm saying it not because I want this. I'm not saying it as the decision that needs to be taken. I'm just using as an example. We the if I am looking at special education to see how I can adjust the money aspect of it and how I will save, no, I'm not using special education. And let me use my own program. So I need money for this, that, and the other. And there are things that goes into programming, um, programming, direct teacher training, not professional development. Professional development, by the way, is necessary for teachers as well. But I'm talking about teacher training, skill development that would allow them to use that skill directly in the classroom. I personally, that would be my priority list. That's where I will put the money. And if, let's say, I'm supposed to use some of the money for facility stuff that I think would help the physical space of the education that is going on, I will not cut it. I will trim it. I will wait. I will do benchmarking. Right now, we can't get this quality. So I will shortchange on the physicality of the school and not the educational piece. And I feel like that's the direction that I would ask that we go to. I know the part that I disagree with Jeremy a lot, although we both said no. And the part that I agree with him is, but I don't know about Basson, but Basson is a physical thing to me. For you get what I mean? It's not a direct educational stuff. So I'll consider it. Class size will bother me because my style of teaching, I need to see your face and be with you. If it's too big, the quality drops. So class size, I personally will bother me. That's what I'm saying. That even if the budget increases, and that is the first statement I said, I know what I know about our community. They are going to vote yes if they are convinced that whatever way in which we are adjusting the budget is a direct classroom educational piece, because we are all committed to the education of our kids. So for me, it's not even the numbers. That's why I keep leaving the numbers to Jeremy, because it's not my strength. I am an educator and I'm looking at kids getting an education for higher education. And that is the first thing that we want to cut off. So if we can have, if I would ask, I would ask as a professor, Melissa Samansky to engage with, because she's curriculum and assistant superintendent of curriculum, engage and see and put the emphasis on there. Even if there's an increase, so be it. But I don't want to say yes to a vote, a budget that I see it. I see the budget document, and someone actually asked me, why are you saying what you're saying when the budget you are supposed to be part of the budget document that says assistant super what do you call it, special ed program and service, when there's nothing in it that is program and service and administration. And I said, oh, I think a colleague put it together on our behalf. But I was wrong to let that slide. We were supposed to actually discuss what is the narrative that we are going to give to the community. So if you go through Facebook, the narrative was all over the place. And people were using it against us. So I would ask, and that's why I keep coming back to our board process, because this budget, I believe, will pass, and even percentage more, if we sit down to do our work again. I mean, again, this is volunteer work, so I'm not trying to say that I love this team and I want us to continue forever. If people will keep voting for everybody here, this is a joke. I completely digress. But what I'm getting at here is, this is really where my heart lies, and I'm not sure, Alex, that I mean, your question about we are ending at 6 o'clock is supposed to have this dialogue here. I don't know. So this is the direction that I think we should go. We should forget the numbers because we are all fixated on numbers right now. And although I know the regular board meeting, I said that the median income is 149,000 in here in Hastings. When we meet, the medium household income is supposed to be what we need is 349,000, and that is one of the hardship that I consider to say no. I know I said that, but I know, like I said, individuals that I've spoken to are willing to do this for their kids, to take 1,000 jobs a day to increase their income for their kids if it's directed to their classroom instruction of kids. And by the way, whether your kid is a general ed kid or a special ed kid, all kids are kids that require specific needs. And so,
Can I just jump in for a second? I just feel like a lot of board members haven't even spoken yet. I have some things to share, but Sylvia, do you have anything you want to share? I can't hear you, Sylvia. I'll share a couple thoughts and then maybe we can see if. So yeah, I think as I look at the vote from the public, yeah, I think what it really said to me is everyone's kind of exhausted out there right now, and everyone's pretty tired, and COVID has done a lot of things for kind of two people, and has made one of the things. This is the first budget I've been a part of that obviously didn't pass, and it is, if you take the bond out, it's not the highest budget I've been a part of, percentage-wise. And so, I've been just doing a lot of thinking on, what is the communication from the community in this vote? I think that's really an important thing, to think about. So one way to look at that is it's a communication about who was able to get out to vote more, right? So that's one way to look at it. Another way is 600 some, Maureen, correct me if I'm wrong, like 661 no votes, percentage-wise, a little over 50% of the voters. Is that kind of the highest no vote from a percentage perspective in a while?
Yeah, definitely. I would say definitely. We're just comparing it to budgets, though, not to bond votes, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Budget votes.
Yeah, no, in terms of actual, that's a significant number, but we don't, I think, you just have to kind of consider the different reasons. We try to figure out, right, what the different thinking,
so
how we could have done better, right?
I think it's, it's really easy if you say something. So we passed the bond by a close to supermajority, right? It's 59%, right? So one could argue, well, it was the bond in here that did it. Well, but the bond passed by 60-some%. So there could be some people who voted for the bond but didn't vote for this budget, right? For a variety of reasons. But I think sometimes where it's easy to do cuts is where you say, well, we actually proposed a new science program, and that was going to be $600,000. People say, whoa, no, that's too much. So it's a very easy place to say, okay, well, we won't introduce that. But there wasn't a lot of new programming. What there was, first of all, the bond, which is critical for all the reasons that you can go read, 20-page documents on from 3 or 4 years ago. It was critical. I think it's very important. I think it's an important thing. So we're obviously paying for that. When you look at contractual increases to salaries in the district, it's what, 6 to 8, somewhere in there, 600,000 to 800,000. So you add those on. Those are contractual. Those are obviously close to our kids. Those are And then, inflation has had, plus, just kind of the increase in some contractual services has had a few $100,000, right?
But the energy bills, like everyone's I know all the homeowners appreciate that we're all experiencing significant upticks in energy.
I think with inflation over 8%, you could argue that a 5.68% increase was actually, especially if you take the bond out, being pretty fiscally responsible. And so, and then you have special ed, which we had, I think, an increase in 15 kids who have services, different from general education. Special education, each kid receiving services actually has a monetary impact. And it's our legal obligation, it's our moral obligation to provide for those kids. So that, I think, as far as budget increase goes, that's where a lot of the increase was, and I think it was about half a million dollars. So, right there you have kind of 1.6 plus 8, plus a couple $100,000 for the inflation, increased services, and then there's a variety of other things that were in those documents. You're getting up towards you're getting up towards kind of like 2.5 at a bare minimum, with just those kind of pretty close to the kids sort of stuff. And so I think that's what made this year very hard for us, because that bond kicked in, and it was also a year where we were dealing with inflation. By the way, I think it should really be noted, and hats off to Maureen for really pouncing on this. What was the rate we locked in February?
It was it was actually right below. I have to look at the thing. I now, honestly, the last 30 hours I've not slept, so my head is spinning. But I won't pull the rate. But we did get, what? We're very fortunate before the Fed started kicking it up. So
yeah, I mean, look, if we went out
we
for
benefited from, I guess, the delays of the state.
Very different story for the taxpayer. Right?
Yeah, no, it was.
Guys, sorry to interrupt. Can you hear me now? Or no?
Yes, we can.
Oh, can. Okay, thanks. Just wanted to know.
So I think that's a really important point to make, that what is a 1.6 could have been higher, right? Could have been significantly higher. So we've got these costs that we've committed to in years past as a district. We've got these costs in teachers that we all feel committed to in paying the people who are closest to our children, who are educating our children. We've got these costs out of our control from an inflation and contractual perspective. So we kind of went into this process with our hands somewhat tied. The idea that we hit the inflation year at the same time we hit the bond year, it just was kind of a very unfortunate set of circumstances. So, so you say all that to say we went in, and then I know the process when budget leaders in the buildings came back to the administration. They came back with a variety of budget items, and I know that the administration really worked with those budget leaders to try to pull down those costs before they even hit the board for the first time, right? And then when they hit the board for the first time, I believe it was 6.6%. We had some conversations around that. And we said, where can you find more? You found about $500,000 more. That got us down to a little bit more than that, 5.68%. We had some conversations saying that felt good. I mean, that felt, given all those things I just went through, that felt good, and that felt right, given what we're trying to. So that's where we are. That's what we passed. That's where, and that's what the community did not pass. So then I think you look at, well, what is that saying? To me, it's saying a few things. Number one, it was a really complex set of things to try to communicate out there. And we probably could have done a better job communicating some of that. I think we did a good job. Maybe we could have done a better job. I think it's also, it's also easy to kind of find kind of spots where you put a budget together like this, you pull $500,000 out, and something gets lost, some compromises get made. And those compromises are some things that people wanted or liked or could have used. And so it's easy to kind of say, how could they not have included X if they've made this budget this big? And I don't discount any of that. I think, everyone's got their own opinions on those topics. We're at a no vote. So what do we do? Here's my take on that. I don't think we should put the same exact budget up. I also don't think we should try to do anything drastic. I think we should try to find spots where we can push things off for a year or two, where we can say, we won't do this. Not as a big ticket item, but it's not going to get it down $1 million, right? It's going to get it down maybe $100,000, $200,000, maybe $300,000. Right? Maybe 400,000. I don't know. That's, I think, the next thing as a board we want to ask the administration to do is to say, how do we maybe push some things off, look at some line items, and get that down to a couple $100,000. So that, because I don't think putting up the same exact budget, as long as we can do things that don't really get at stuff that's really close to the kids, I think that would be something that we can have a very good and tight narrative to the community about. I also think we have to get out the vote more. In some ways, I think this no vote was a blessing. And I say that because it has been assumed that it's going to pass. So what happens? People don't show up, right? Well, guess what? It didn't pass. And now people realize the reality of not showing up is we're now in a conversation about cuts. If it happens again, we're having this conversation about how to pull $1.4 million out of this budget. That will touch the kids. That's going to touch the kids. On Jeremy's point around the appropriated balance, I hear where he's coming from, and I understand that. And I understand getting closer to the bone is valuable because it gets the budget down. But as Jeremy alluded to, it gets the budget down for 1 year. Now you're in a place where the budget's down for 1 year. You can have a similar percentage increase. You have similar budget growth, but you're operating a budget much closer to the bone. One of the things I am exceptionally grateful for in Maureen Caravallo is she keeps us out of trouble, which you can't say for every district. I will be honest about that. There's a local district recently who just got fined $1.3 million because they screwed up payroll taxes. That's a fine from the federal government. Something like that happens. We're looking for $1 million somewhere, and we're getting fined. I often think about the work that Maureen does as like, someone who's amazing in the office, and they're so amazing that you almost forget what they're doing is so amazing because you take it for granted. And I think the kind of work that Maureen does in this district behind the scenes and with the budget is really quite amazing and has kept us in a very fiscally sound place for a very long time. Maybe this vote was just a way to kind of make us have this conversation and acknowledge these sorts of decisions that have to be made. So I think that leaving that in gives us a safety net. And if we have to roll over that million each year, we do that. Maybe it's 500,000 some year, but it keeps us from getting into a place where all of a sudden we hit some tax certs that came through. Our tax cert reserve isn't there to cover that in a given year, and we have a little breathing room. And I feel comfortable personally with that. Not everyone might, but I feel personally comfortable with that, and I like that. So that's my proposal: is we find a way to cut out maybe a few $100,000, and we put the budget vote back up, and we get a strong campaign out there communicating to people what it's about.
Doug, if we do that, my vote is a yes right now. Exactly what you said. You have a way of just delivering information, and this is all that was in my head. And thank you for just putting it together succinctly, being our kids focused and doing things gradually. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to what we are going to work together.
Thank you, Rams.
Well, all I would say, if you all can hear me, I apologize for any technical difficulties earlier, is that we don't have a lot of time. We can't belabor this conversation. We have to get down to brass tacks, and the community and the public is relying on us to do that. I do think that, as board members who none of us hold the expertise of being professional educational administrators, there's a reason that we hire people to serve as our superintendents and people who serve as our building leaders, people who serve in our central office, because we rely on the expertise that they have developed, not just now, but over the course of many years and careers that have developed over time, understanding the ins and outs year after year. In my estimation, we were presented on March 21st with 7 line items, which added up to reductions of $2.4 million. That is not something that we can obviously sustain. I think the burden is on us as board members to understand context, to understand history, to look at the board's budgets as passed before we come to the board, so that we understand what are the trends, where have things needed to be cut, what is the history for why we spend in particular areas. I do look to the administrators as people who possess a wealth of knowledge that I do not possess. I trust them when they say these are not recommendations for cuts that we would make. However, having said that, if in fact I don't think that there's any way that we could possibly ask for the community for more, given that they rejected the budget that we put before them last night, I would say that if we have to put a reduced budget before the community, that has to be informed by the 7 areas that they already lined out to us and in the amounts that they think would be appropriate. And I see you nodding your head or shaking your head, Damaris, but I'm just, this is just my perspective, that I believe that those were areas that were identified by the building leaders who were informed by the central leadership, who were informed by the building leaders. And I think if that's what they said, these are the areas that we need to go to, I'm going to believe, because that's what we're supposed to do, we are supposed to hire people who have expertise. We have to not supplant their knowledge and not destabilize them by making them believe that we don't trust them when they give us their best recommendations. I know that Maureen has been in district for well into the double digits. Dr. McCursey has had his lineage of being a superintendent for several years. And when they come to us, they give us the best information in good faith. And then the burden is on us to look at those numbers, to look at all the documentation, to read it with depth, to ask discriminating questions. And then, to the fulfillment of our consciousness, we have to vote what we think is right. I believe I made the right decision in voting for the budget that we put before the district last night, and I stand by that. Am I disappointed that it went down? Absolutely. I think it's going to ultimately be a disservice to our district if we can't get the second one passed. That has real world impacts for our students. That's why all of us, who are the 7 of us here, have been brought to this table. I feel very passionately about this. I have 3 kids in the district, and when they're out of the district, I'll still feel passionately about it. We have an obligation as fiduciaries and as public servants to not feel so confident that we know everything, but that we need to ask questions. We have to be open-minded, and we have to hear the facts even when they don't serve the cause that we think that we're advancing. So I feel like that was a monologue. I just really wanted the opportunity to be able to say that, to really extend my thanks, in particular, again, to all the people who constitute the professionals of our district, but with a special nod to Maureen and to Dr. McCursey and to Melissa Szymanski. Thank you.
I'm going to try to jump back in if no one else is jumping in. But what I'm concerned about, a couple things. I don't think Bill has heard anything concrete from us as a board, and that's something we have to consider on how we're going to have any discussions. I think Doug threw out a number there that implies he would be in support of a really small cut and sending out the budget again. Although, Doug, you said it wasn't sending out the same budget again. If it's actually just $100,000 different, that does sound like the exact same budget with a small tweak. I think Bill and Maureen deserve in the next 13 days to have a sense of 2 things from the board. What would the board support the way it was laid out? Could they get 7-0 support? Does the board think that this no vote is going to bring out more yes votes in the next time? I don't really follow that argument. There's just as many people who don't come out to vote no because for 40 years in a row, the budget passed, as parents who might have stayed home thinking that for 40 years in a row, the budget passed. So I don't know if the board needs to play psychologist, but you know, there's 7 of us in this volunteer position. How do you guys reflect on the fact that for the first time in 40 years, I'm guessing, the community voiced an opinion different than what was usual? And that's something on its own that the bill needs to hear. How do the 7 of us think this board wants to respond to that no vote? It could have easily has been a yes vote by 20 votes, and it still should have been a shockwave that we have a problem in 2 years, in 1 year. So, I mean, that's, I think Bill's been in education more than me, and I don't think Hastings is unique. But the 7 of us have contacts to give you an idea of, do you think a $55.8 million budget is the right risk to send to this community? And that's a tough game. I mean, Damaris gives me credits for being on numbers. My real numbers are statistics and probability. How much are you willing to risk getting another no vote for?
Jeremy, can I jump in?
Yes, I'm going to stop. Yes.
I mean, I just, you know, the dialogue here makes it sound sort of, honestly, like a game, you know, and I feel like the right thing to do, you know, there are structural factors in New York State that make it hard to run a school district and make it hard to run a small school district. We can talk about the lack of special education funding that New York State has promised. We can talk about the fact that this town doesn't really develop and hasn't really developed a tax base, so the budget falls on the residents largely. There are lots of structural factors, and those, and we can talk about the law that was passed in 2012, the tax cap, you know, tax rate cap. Those are structural factors, and I think that the orientation that any district has to have is to make sure that the dollars that we spend show up for maximal benefit to the students. And so the question is, what's the best thing to do with this budget? To me, it's to take the first step in that process. And I don't attach a number to it. We define what touches the kids, what gives it the most benefit, and we go to that. I don't say if it's a cut of $100,000, that's what it is. That's what it is. If it's adding $100,000, that's what it is. That's for me the ethical and moral obligation of a school district, and that's the water in which we swim in this state. And so I just find it, you know, dissembling to attach a number. I'll say it again. It's like saying what length should a piece of string be? You know, we have a obligation and we have a job to do, and we have a particular obligation, to me, for the children that are coming out of 2 years of the schooling that they had, and the kids who are coming, you know, who are going to college, who depend upon the rigor of the curriculum and depend upon the opportunities. And furthermore, when we cut things, it's the kids who have access to the least that get hurt the most. You know, the analogy was brought up that, and this was mentioned by people that you know, there are many families in town who are struggling, who are going to the food bank. You know, the school system is the same type of collective body, that we provide opportunity as efficiently as possible. And for many kids, they won't get anywhere else. This is sort of the education bank. And so I just, you know, we've met for 2 hours. We talked about numbers in a very abstract way. And I just think that for me, the conversation did not focus enough on the reality and the timeline that we're talking about. And I feel like that has to be our focus for the next 13 days. It's not a number. It's not, you know, giving somebody something to, you know, a number to be happy about or be upset about. Let's define what the next step in sustainability is for this district. Let's get out there and let people know about it. And that is honestly the best that we can do.
Yeah.
Can
I jump in? Okay, actually, Doreen, can I jump in one quick?
Well, Doreen hasn't really had much of a chance to talk at all, Damaris.
No, I know that. That's why I'm asking her permission. So, Doreen, let me just thank you. Um, I just to Alex, thank you. What you said is important to me as well. That it's not about the number, decrease 100 or add 100. It's about the kids. So that being said, Dr. Makesi, this is my direct suggestion. My direct suggestion is that if we can rearrange and reshuffle the selection of what it is, for example, of special education that we are going to put the money into, because that would be helpful. This is what I mean by that. So far as I'm concerned, with special education, there is nothing about the budget that is going into program and services. So I am still having conversations coming in that there is the assumption that the budget driver for this 56 million that we are talking about is the assistant director position, which I know you've answered in different ways and different forms, and I have also done that it's not even an addition, and it's not part of the money that is going to special ed. I honestly think that particular rearranging and reshuffling of money to direct it to a position was not supposed to be part of the budget narrative, because it's created confusion as with thoughts in people's heads that is the part that is causing this 56 million or whatever in 5.6% increase that we are talking about. So that being said, the non-programming aspects that Doc has spoken about that can be delayed here, or it can be done gradually, and all those things. I would ask that those savings go into specific programming directed at special ed, for example, that would enrich the skill development, the whatever it is that the program level at the school level is saying they need to let it be more effective, so that students don't leave the district but rather stay. Because the reason why people, and I'm a special ed mom, the reason why they leave is because they feel like they are not receiving those services, and that's why they leave, and that becomes a cost to us. So how do we redirect resources that we can hold off and gradually do to the programs directly? And like I said, and like Alex also echoed, if it means adding 100,000 or removing 100,000, or even becoming more, the percentage increasing, which I said at the very beginning, that I believe will get a yes vote. Because Doc showed statistics of 8% increases, and whatever it was in enterprise and on Facebook, huge increases. So I don't think, again, like Alex says, it may be even the increase part, but more about what is my kid getting directly. And then I want to give a quick direct response to Sylvia's when I was shaking my hand.
Damaris, can you just pause one second, Damaris?
Sure.
I know we had a hard stop at 6. I'm not sure if Bill, that was for you. I wasn't sure why we had the hard stop at 6, but I want to respect that. Is Bill, can I just check in with you right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's critical the board have some time. I mean, I think it was to try and help your fatigued administrators, but I think it's really important right now that you continue this dialogue. So I think you set a time that works for you, because it's actually not 13 days. I mean, we're going to have to bring back to you early next week some modified recommendations. 31st is when we've got to have this all said and done. So we really need to be thinking early next week. So I think, I mean, I can certainly stay on. I think I can gather notes if Melissa.
I'm willing to stay on too. I mean, obviously it's tired, like it'd be good not to go on like till like 8 or something, but yeah.
Yeah, so keep, I mean, our time is of the essence, so please keep going.
Thank you, and Doug, thank you. That is a very mindful, respectful thing. And I know I talk a lot, so thank you for reeling me back. So the response that I wanted to give to um, Sylvia's comment is that, and to anybody else, is that anyone who knows me knows that I seek out knowing, because knowledge makes you well informed. So it's not because any yes or no, or any way of understanding something and I'm asking questions, drilling, it's not tantamount to diminishing somebody else's expertise or efforts and all of that. The other shaking of head with the seven thing that was mentioned was that is what I call the broccoli thing. You may like it, other person may like it, but these seven, what are the what is the informed decision to create those seven items when we are looking at 600 budget items? Seven is what is reeled out to be given to us, and that's what Jeremy was saying. A budget that a board is supposed to be adopting, should it be heavily hanging on the leadership team to select seven things out of the 600 things? So for me, when I was shaking my head, I feel like that is the problem. We should, yes, I have gone through, I do my homework. I've gone through all those budgets outside of things, outside of the district, to search and understand. So I just want that to be clear for the record. But in moving forward, I totally support what Alex said about that we not thinking about the money per se, but about the kids' education first, and making sure that we take everything is about the kids' education, but the direct programming aspect and support of the teachers to harness them what they need to bring that to bear is what I would ask that we do, because that is what the community, so far as I'm concerned, wants to see, and that's what I personally want to see as well. Thank you.
I'm not quite sure where we go from. What's that?
I just want to make sure Doreen had some things.
That's okay, Allison. You can go. That's okay, and I'll go after Allison. No, you talk less than I do. That's for sure. So because I talk a lot, so you go first, and then I'm happy to go after.
You go. I'm waiting.
Okay. So a couple of things that I want to say is that what I really feel like hearing, and Doug sort of touched on this, Damaris touched on this, and then Bill in his presentation showed us this, that I think what really happened here for me is a failure of the board to really promote and to let people know what was happening with the budget. I'm upset that I believe and that there were many lies and half-truths and purposeful misconceptions put out about this budget that were an easier message for people than actually diving into the budget. And we should have countered that in a much more public way. I'm not going to go through now. We don't have the time line by line, but everything was said. But I think it's really important to note that. And so whatever the budget is moving forward, I think that, I personally will be much more aggressive about countering this. I don't like these fake news items that are spread in our paper or throughout flyers in our community or talking to people on social media. One of the things that is the main problem for me is that, barring Damaris, I understand what you're saying about special education, but for me to say that the budget is not about programming, the entire budget is about programming. When you figure that 85% of the budget goes to salaries, then that is programming. That's what we're paying for, the programs that we're putting forth for our students. So I think that is something that the community really needs to understand, that everything about the budget is, something that is not about programming is if we're, giving Bill a car. Okay, that's not about programming. We're not giving Bill a car. These lies about salaries, it's, a lot of these decisions about, somebody said that it's not about staffing, that because the staffing is decreasing. Guess what? It is about staffing, because everybody gets a certain amount of raise that, by the way, was voted on and made the contract by people before us. Okay, so everything is about staffing as well. all of this part is for our students. And I encourage everybody to really get out there and explain things much more clearly. I thought we had, but I think we need to dig in deeper and be much more clear and really counteract lies. If you don't want to vote, that's fine, but I don't want you to vote because you don't understand.
Sorry.
Okay, so that's one thing. And the second thing is that, I agree and understand that people feel that we should cut the budget because the vote was no. I think that perhaps the risk, to Jeremy, to your point, I mean, maybe we go forward with this budget again, and then we see, because I don't know, the no voters, we would have to have such a significant cut that the no voters aren't going to say like, oh, you took it from 5.68 to 5, so now I'm going to vote yes. I don't know that that's true, but that's a risk that we're running. So I'm not sure that, I don't know what the number that our no voters could get to and appreciate it. And then one final thing that I've said to some members of this board, and I believe this, is that one of the reasons people move to this town is because of our schools. That's one of the main draws of this town. It's not our downtown. Sorry, guys, but if you go to any other town, they have a much bigger downtown. It's not because of the short commute, because people now work remotely or work hybrid. So people don't have to go into the city. What we have is our schools. And if we want to continue our schools to be great, when you cut things, if you make something 28 students in an elementary school, then if I'm a person coming to buy a house because I have little kids, I'm not moving here. So in effect, the little budget that we're having for our budget increase is actually going to end up slapping everybody when the values of our homes go down. And maybe we're not supposed to talk about values of our homes, but I think that that's a significant thing to consider, that this is why people move to the community, is our schools. And we're only shooting ourselves in the foot if we don't maintain a really good school system. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Allison, did you want to go, or can I follow on with?
Go ahead.
You sure?
Well, Alex, let me jump back in there because I stopped so that you guys can start talking again. I know it's not a game what we're dealing with here, but my background is in game theory and probability. And what I think would be helpful is if we acknowledge the fact that the next budget that gets put out there is a different sort of vote. It's a yes-no vote between two hard numbers. So, I mean, statistics can be misrepresented or used to confuse or used to help people. I'm just wondering, like, as a board, do you feel comfortable the way you heard the no vote, and it's only 600 no's and only 600 yeses? Do you feel comfortable putting out a yes or no vote on something that is $100,000 less or $500,000 less, or what I suggested, maybe $900,000 less? And I acknowledge what you're saying. Kids aren't numbers and communities aren't numbers. But if I was, going to be working on this budget for the next 7 days as an administrator, I would want to know what the board thought was worth the tolerance of risk. And I don't feel that putting out a budget that's very similar in size is a risk I want to take, because that could lead to a quick a $54.5 million budget instead of a 56. So I'm not going to use the word cuts. I think, right now we're sending out our next budget is going to tell the community, do you want to spend 54.5? Because I think that's about what the contingency gets us to. Or do you want to spend 54.9? Or, and in that sense is where I'd hope for the next 5 days, we find ways to give input in a public setting, because we're not supposed to be talking to each other or to our, administrators too much in a behind the scenes setting. So I'm going to pause there again.
I would just say, Jeremy, that, from my point of view, is we work towards the best yes that we can get. There are a lot of people who just want a lower number. And, and even for a few dollars, I've said it before, to see kids crying, 11, 12-year-olds, because they didn't make a modified team, how important those things are for them. I'm not willing to talk about a number that what's that worth? It's not worth it for me. I feel like what gets us to the most yeses. I cannot look at this as what dollar value cut is going to, satisfy the no voters that they feel like they've won the argument. And to Doreen's point, and this is sort of a community issue, it's very important to be involved in the process. We've had this, the budget process has gone on for months. We've had any number of opportunity to ask questions about it. We didn't get a ton of engagement. And what is a reality in this town, and what Doreen was referencing, is frankly the lies and the fabrications. And one of the most odious ones was that what was turned into that if there was good news, that if the budget failed, that the board has promised to bring us a better one, and that's just a lie. And the residents of the town that want to interface positively with the process need to recognize that that's not part of the process. That detracts from what we're able to do here. And the best counteraction to that is to get involved in the positive side of things. And that's what we need. And we need to determine what's the best yes we can get to and what's the healthiest process that gets us there. So just to circle way back to Bill's chart of 1, 2, 3 options, number 2 is where I'm at. Can we make the spending work a little better? Then, work more for the kids, then let's do it. But I'm not focused on starving the beast, and I'm not focused on getting to a particular number.
And can I just add one thing to what Alex said, is that, we just came out of a pandemic of 2 years of our kids suffering. Do we really want to start nickel and diming our kids and taking away programs? I mean, it's not enough what's been happening for the past 2 years. They're finally back to normal. And now we're looking at things to cut. It's just so not fair. We talk about the budget is supposed to be for the children. We're completely failing them if we start taking things away.
So I'm going to jump.
Sorry, go. Sorry.
I just want to make a comment that at 6:30, I'm going to jump off for a few minutes because I wanted to set my middle school child up for Family University. Speaking of programs for the children. After I've done that, I'll come back. I wish that we had conducted an exit poll. At Maureen, we talked about this as we were at the end of the voting time, just to hear where people's thoughts were and where the misunderstandings were. I heard a lot about people saying, I want special ed to focus on the programs, and that more money is being asked for, but there's not focus on the programs. My understanding is that the increase is going directly to services for additional students who were found to be codified. Why can't I say this properly? Students in need of special ed services. So they are going directly to the students. The only increase there goes to those additional students. It's not going to some other entity. The administrator who was transferred from one role, a special ed person who was transferred into another role, that was because our building leaders determined this would be a more effective way to deliver services and make her and her excellent skills work better for the schools and the children. And it actually came in at a lower cost to the district. So that was a tremendous efficiency and something working for the children, not against them. So that whole argument didn't make sense to me. And I think people didn't communicate that, or people didn't hear the presentations in which it was communicated. So I don't see what you would cut there. If we want to say to our leadership team, look, if there happens to be some glorious $1 million that you overlooked the first time that you could just remove and not affect anything, then that's great if they can find that. Something that was just sitting there. The professional development, I think, is extremely important. It's best practices. There are things that are that Bill has found and others that are very cost efficient. Even if we removed it, we would be saving well under $100,000. Nothing that would significantly change this budget. And those are opportunities for our teachers and our students. I believe in that wholeheartedly. And class sizes going up, to me, is not an option. I don't want to see teachers losing their jobs, and I also don't want to see it more class sizes increasing, because I think that does make teaching and learning more difficult. The busing is the one thing that has been raised, the out-of-district busing for private schools. You know, I struggle with that because those parents also pay taxes in this district. We would be the only river town to not bus our private school children. Maureen has gone back again and again to work with other river towns and develop this collaborative approach to the busing. You know, kids leave the district for all kinds of reasons that we've discussed ad nauseum, for social reasons and the rest of it. And they are in need, their parents can need help just like anybody else. We don't know if they're applying for financial aid when they went there. And it hurts a little bit to say, here's your bus ticket, now spend 2 hours commuting both ways, for a young child. Even if it was just half an hour, if I'm sending my third grader, you know, that's tough. So that's why I, again, sort of appeal to you all. I don't know where to go from here. I personally, as I said, if the building leaders think there are some very obvious things that they proposed earlier that they want to review, then I'm all for that. Otherwise, I would send back something that's very similar to what we have.
Can I try to just pull things together right now, because I think we're veering towards a 6:30 hour, and I think we can probably give direction to the administration to come back in a couple of days to us. And I think I'm starting to hear some alignment on this call. And Jeremy kicked off throwing out this idea of $1 million. I'm not hearing anyone on the call that's aligned with that, so I don't think that's going to have.
Doug, before you tie it all up, I had some input so that you can add it. It will be. I was typing it out, so it's not going to be long. Is that okay?
Okay.
So I think that we are all agreeing to the fact that class size is not cutting is not an option, and also cutting direct programming is not an option. So I think that Dr. Makesi, who is, I know, is taking notes, would have that. I wanted to be more direct in what, and this I'm talking to Dr. Makesi because we've done our deliberations. So the way that I'm looking at, I personally, a no vote to a budget that I have submitted it has happens all the time with me in CUNY, and I know there are CUNY people here who actually have delayed my budget here before with things. So it's no budget for me. It's not a crisis. So I just want to put it out there. But and it's always a good way for us to move forward. Even if it was a yes, it doesn't mean we should rest our oasis. We should still move forward. So that being said, Jeremy mentioned something. We can meet, which is not correct. We can meet with the leadership team anytime. It's not illegal. Anytime. It's not illegal for board members to meet with leadership team. We just have to respect their time and availability. What is against the law is us, the board. OML laws applies to us, the board, not our engagement with the leadership team. So I would ask that, although we are having this limited, I personally, this is what I'm going to do. I would reach out to the leadership team and ask their availability and go to them and give them unsolicited suggestions that they can bring back to their administrators and teachers to see how we can move forward. So this is not going to end. We don't need to have these deliberations an engagement with leadership team only at the meeting as individuals. So I just wanted to put it out there. So I'm going to give this one example to Dr. Makesi. So Dr. Makesi, this is an example. I have received a budget that it's not matching what I submitted as a program director. And these are the things I wanted to do. I wanted to provide professional development and training, skill development training to my instructors to help with giving quality instruction to the students in the classroom, because I did class observation and students evaluations and all those things based on statistics, data driven, to see that these are the things that would increase the students' performance in the classroom. So I've asked for money to support that process. I also asked for money for monitors because of the situation. I needed monitors because those monitors we have right now, they are old, and the software update requires a new monitor. So there's a program that I think is great that will really help with that. So I need the monitors as well. I can go on and on and on, but I'm just going to use these two. And then I'm supposed as a program coordinator or as an administrator in the building or teacher or anybody, let's say my boss comes to me and said, well, all the things you submitted is not going to happen. The board of trustees said no. I mean, not the community, not, I mean, I said no, but the community said no. So we have to figure out what cuts we can make. I am not going to say I'm going to cut that instructional piece of the skill development and professional development part, because I know the emphasis is education. What I would do is that, okay, this software, I need it. It's helpful. And the old computers, the monitor cannot support this new software upload. How am I going? It's a catch-22. Okay, so how about we buy only one monitor for now, or two monitors for now? This is the deliberation I'm talking about. This is the kind of ask I'm talking about. This is what I'm saying, that shouldn't make it Maureen figuring it out. So that's when Maureen has been telling us, let's start the budget early. Jeremy has been saying this, and these conversations must start early. So because I'll be assuming that I'm going to get all this requests, and then all of a sudden the community says no, and then, oh my gosh. So the perplexity is being felt. So that's why at this point it's too late for us to assume that there's going to be a huge cut, a small cut, and all those things. And so I agree with Alex that we shouldn't put money to this adjustment that we are asking. So what I'm asking, Dr. Makesi, if you can go to each of your building program leaders that are in charge, the chairs, that's the word, the chairs. If we could start with the chairs, because the chairs are involved in the specificity of the instruction. From what I know from our community, which again, we all are part of the community, I promise in what I know that and engagement, like the observation that I see and the engagement that I see on Facebook and all of that, if the chairs of each of the schools are able to come back and say that, okay, I can't cut this one, this instruction piece and blah blah blah, I can't, the monitor part, blah blah blah, and they give that report to you, which we don't have any business knowing because it's an operational piece, and we manage to save or not save, but rather it may not even be a save. It may be that, oh, this is what they want us, the community wants us to focus. Okay, by the way, for my program to work, I did not submit this budget, but if I should get this, it to work, and therefore it's actually going to increase by 3% from what I gave you. Let's submit that. Let's see the percentage it comes to. We shouldn't concentrate on the percentage. And the we can, again, we have to give it to them and give the communication and engagement. We'll communicate this to the committee and the PTS and all of that, and we will be able to have a sense of whether people will be against it or not. So I have faith in our community that way, and this is what I will strongly suggest. Although again, I'm just one person. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it.
So I think,
let me say one broad thing, Doug, and I think wrapping up would be really helpful. And I think zeroing in on those three broad options that I hear some of the board members speaking to, and Jeremy, you all have been very clear. I'm hearing a lot that is helpful. But let me just stress one thing. This is a budget bubble from the bottom up, with then facilitation, review, all the rest. And I think one of the struggles, and I've seen it everywhere I've gone, and luckily we have the Ed Fund here. In my last two stops, there was a very robust education fund. And because even in very well-resourced districts, the vast majority of the money, rightly so, is focused on your top quality personnel. And then you start to talk about the other requirements of having top quality personnel. Obviously, their salaries, their benefits go right through. You're left with very little discretionary money for those individuals, if I'm understanding, those individuals have that creative idea, because there's all this fundamental other work that you got to build in. But we listen, we draw in from right up from the classroom level up through the department chairs. But the reality is there's very little discretionary money left at that point to provide that. So that's where for those innovations, we try and partner elsewhere, be it HEF, be with, in this case, PTSA, as much as possible. But this, I want to show you, this is a student-centered budget, bubbled up from the building level right up through listening to classroom teachers, department chairs, all the rest. And we can, so I think, Doug, if you could start pulling together, I have heard something I can play back to you as a test, but I'd rather kind of see where you all are.
so yeah, so your three options were put the same budget forward, make some some small changes, maybe that do or don't impact actually the finance, some changes that do impact the finance. So just some kind of changes to the budget. And then the third option was some pretty significant decreases in costs. And so I'm hearing somewhere between option 1 and 2 is where the board is at. And one of the caveats being, if we do, for example, option 2, that could range in size from a couple hundred, maybe a few $100,000. But anything that touches programming or children is not something that the board will support. Somewhere, and so what it seems to me a good next step is, and I think it's a great point you raised, Bill, and multiple people have raised it on this call, which is, this budget was not made in a vacuum. It was made in partnership with the building leaders. They made it with their department heads and the people in their buildings. So in many ways, it was responsive to the needs that they saw for children. And so I think what we're asking as a board is, can we go back and somewhere between option 1 and 2, take a critical look and see, are there things we can push off a little bit for a year or two? Are there things where we could trim it or not do something this year? And it sounds like there was alignment around the board to give that directive to administration to come back in a couple days with that. Is anyone on the board hearing what I say as the directive and having a different point of view? They think that that's not where the board is. Okay.
I'm fine for that to happen, Doug. I'm just, cautious about the ability for that to happen, but yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to put, pressure. The pressure is on for Bill and Maureen and the building leadership team to figure this out. But I think it's very important to note not taking anything away from the students.
Yeah.
Doug, I definitely agree with that summary. I just think there's a big risk in the board reading this no vote as misunderstanding the budget, having been tricked by media or lies. I think there's a big chance that the residents did understand the budget, and that we're running a risk where we're putting a tough vote forward. But I think that's definitely an accurate summary of what I've heard tonight.
All right. I want to echo what Jeremy said, that I'm hearing that aspect of it. Obviously, there's always a misunderstanding and misconstruing of information, but I don't think that it's fair to make it the reason why. That was not the reason why I voted no. So if we are working with the assumption that the committee didn't understand it was a great budget, then we are losing all of this. So I think that yes, there is that part, but also there is that work that needs to be done. And echoing what Maureen said, don't we should not be cutting programs.
Okay.
And Doug, if I'm hearing you right, I mean, we're taking sort of the approach like because I think obviously, and just so you know, I mean, the district, or at least since I've worked here, I think we respect votes. We respect, what people right to vote. Of course, we don't want to. We want to acknowledge there are people who may look at it and say, because understanding that the debt is coming on, and that plus a few other factors, like kind of at the same time we're handling, and it's not one area. It's kind of everything mixed into a bunch, and coming out of a pandemic and all the rest. But maybe to your point, we can create a list or different types of things that either can say, hey, can we push it off a year? Because I think what we're talking about now is not necessarily like large, what I would call, like kind of recurring cut. Because sometimes like a personnel is more of a recurring cut, but something more like look at areas in which we can shave down or take a more gradual approach. Is that correct? And then kind of bucket it like that.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Understanding like that, because we're also dealing with a large percentage increase driven by, of course, like new debt, like which we all understand fully, to see if there's other ways we can kind of just shift into, because I think what we're looking at is not so much recurring cuts as much as like phasing or trimming, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Because that's just helpful, I think, for everybody, because then you're not looking for, we can kind of do it in bunches and look at it, across the board with everybody.
Great. Okay. When is the next time? Thank you to Bill, Maureen, and Melissa for looking into that. When is the next time we're going to get together? We've got the meeting on Monday. Is that correct? Is that the best time? Or Bill, Maureen, do you feel like you need more time with the board before that?
I think we have to make that work, because we need to, I think, come in Monday with some ideas for you to work with and consider, and because we don't have till the 31st, right? We have to be done well before then, because wherever we land, then I think there are other pieces of this we really have to work closely with the board on, which is, how to communicate and how to support the community to get to yes on this. And so the sooner we figure out and have the board comfortable with the next step, then we can move into the communication piece and all. Because that timeline we laid out is tight. So we would be ready. So simply put, Monday we will be ready. We can look at some other parts of the meeting to trim that back for you. There's some very important parts of the meeting. There's the tenure recognition. You are going to be hearing about sort of future plans for the seniors going out of school. We might be able to modify that a bit, but we don't have a lot of meetings left. But I think we had to focus your energies heavily Monday on this, and we can be ready.
Can we, is there a possibility? No, I think initially we were going to have a finance committee meeting that night, but I think in light of everything, is there a possibility of starting the board meeting early with like a work session type, similar to what we did here for like an hour and change or so, if that works? And then, so that we're not taking away from the kids that evening and the teachers and things.
So 6 o'clock, you suggesting, Maureen?
I mean, if everyone can make that work, because I think I think that tonight everyone's had an opportunity to really speak. And then I'm also picking up on, is there a need, I don't want to but is there a need then to come back with some things around special education, either clarifications or something as well? Is that what we're hearing?
Yeah, well, let me ask a question there, just because
it
makes.
I have that piece right. Yeah.
Let me help. Just ask a question. And Allison, you summarized exactly what's going on here really clearly. We protected every dollar needed for children in special ed. Let me repeat that. We protected every dollar needed for children in special ed. There are a lot of districts with the increases seen there, and I'm paying attention to all the concerns here, that there are other districts where they would have found ways to shave back that support for special ed children. We did not do that. We did not do that. And the only modifications we're talking about is to say, how do we better serve our students? So the assistant director idea, and we don't have to match everyone around us. We can find creative ideas further away. And a creative idea further away is when you have too much work for too few people supporting special ed, you start to not do a good job for the children. And that's what we're seeing in Hastings. As good as we are managing it, we got to get better. So the thought was at no cost and actually savings, add the assistant director. There's been a lot of resistance to that. That caught a lot of concerns. No matter how much we explained it, that caught a lot of concerns. One idea would be, let's wait on that. Because the other big piece of this, which I got to reiterate because I'm listening, is to do a program review, to look at Katzman, to look at the other study that was done. Because one of the feelings out there is, hey, several years ago, these studies were done and nobody paid attention. I got here and said, I want to pay attention to them. So what I've been saying for the last several months with the board is, let's have a program review. Let's look at those two studies. Let's pull from those studies new work for high quality services for our students in special ed. One of the recommendations may be you need to bolster your management. So maybe that's something I'm going to get really focused here. Do we hold off on that assistant director position for a future year? Or do we say, just reiterate more clearly in the communication, this is a no cost move, Hastings. It's a no cost move to try and improve the support for our students. And the other piece is the program review. We want to look at how to get better. And overall of that, please know every dollar needed by special ed children, we protected that in this proposal.
Can I just say one clarifying piece, Bill? Because I know you and I totally know what you're saying. I think somewhere, we're saying what we're doing an internal review of the external 2 program reviews that have already been performed, not and using our staff to kind of dig into it, not so much as like performing our own program review, which I think sometimes there may have been a misconception that we were suggesting those other 2 don't, like that is the point. And the other thing, I'm just saying this, and these aren't my words, but I think a lot of people internally, we all know that anything that happens for special ed, and we've said it impacts, is good for all students. I think the thinking is an extra administrator also benefits building level administrators who, of course, should be and are actively involved with the special education students, but also having extra hands, right, also helps focus. So like, it's also a benefit to gen ed students. Again, this was some of the thinking. I'm not trying to oversell it. I'm just saying there was a lot of different thinking around it that was trying to say it's for special ed and for all of our students. And I will not say anything else now, but that I'm just giving some backdrop of what was sort of the thinking around the town,
I support, I support, and I'm a special ed mom, and probably I should say this vocally. And I like that you brought it up because I needed to confirm. I support, for the records again, Maureen and Dr. McKessie, I support the decision surrounding the assistant director position. I do. And I said it at a public board meeting, in one of our public board meetings, because you explained to me the way that you had it structured, that it was cost saving, and that position was needed to be able to do the exact direct programming. And I talked to you face to face about it, if you will remember. And like I said, dialogue with leadership team doesn't have to be OML. So I got understanding of it. I fully got the understanding of it, that is needed to do because I understand you need to do this programming thing. You need to put the skill development training for each of the teachers and all of that, which again, by the way, community be alert. There may be next year another increase because we need that money to do the training for all the program. I've seen that program review. It will be a game changer for Hastings special ed, and we have to take it strides at a time. So again, I started my input by saying that even if there is an increase, which I publicly have put on Facebook, and I'm not going to engage with anybody on Facebook, so no one should be asking me questions there. If when I'm off the board, I will come back to Facebook. but I posted it there as just to share. But just so I support it personally. I do. And again, I have a child who is a special ed kid. So all again, I mean, I don't want to belabor the point, but all I'm saying is that if there is those monitor kind of example that I gave for my program thing, and Maureen, you talked about it yourself, that would be helpful. And the last thing I would say is this. I would love for us to have a mental philosophy of how we view our students. That all of our students, whether they are gen ed, general education students, or special education students, are all one kit that all need specific needs. Unfortunately, for us humans, we've created an educational system that is servicing certain specific needs more than others. And so policy has helped solve that marginalization of education servicing certain specific needs, which they have labeled general education more than other needs because all of us are different. So that being said, thank God special education has its own line item so that we can zero in and see whether they are a marginalized group, whether they are getting that quality service that is owed to them like every other specific need child that they've been labeled general education. So I'm grateful. I was thanking Maureen a lot, but I should be thanking Dr. Makesi too. So sorry about that. So I'm grateful to Dr. Makesi that he has decided to zero in on special ed. And I remember one of the first things I mentioned to Dr. Makesi that the litmus test for any school district is how the special education is handled. So I am in support. 100%, 1000%, and I want to publicly state it because again, if some misconstrued information has been out there, and in the beginning I wasn't, so that is factual. And Dr. Makesi, I told you that. You remember? I wasn't. Community members reached out to me, and I said, "No, another director, no way, no way." So I was, and I'm being honest. So that's why we have the recordings of the. I will urge people to do their homework. I ask people to do informed choice of the budget voting. We do all our public meetings are meetings of deliberation, not just yay, yay, nay, nay. So I also like the fact that if the community members, you listen to the last board meeting, you will see that we were thinking, and I love this collective board. Like I said, we were thinking. We've always had issues with everybody, but what I'm getting at is that for the most part, we work well. And we were talking, deliberating about how we would change one of our meetings into working sessions, right, Doc? Didn't we say that? So that we can be exhaustive in our work, So I supported Dr. Makesi, and the only thing that I will and I spoke to some SEPTA individuals, and I said I just didn't want it to look like a bone with no meat on it. And then what ends up happening is that this is the narrative that is out there that $56 million is for special ed. And then next year when we need the real money for special ed, people are like, we already give money to special ed. That was my
Maris, if I could cut us off. You and I do talk the most, but that was 5 minutes. We're trying to wrap it up. It's a challenge. I think we do better when we're in person, you and I, from when on the microphones, but it does, we have, I think you made a lot of points already.
You are right. I'm done talking. You are right.
So just to wrap things up, Bill, your first year in the district and you failed budget vote, and that doesn't feel good. But I want to say, and I think in conversations I've had with the full board, everyone here would agree that your leadership is deeply appreciated. And in so many ways, you are bringing so much of what this district needs. So I just want to publicly thank you and appreciate your work on the budget that was put forth that failed, and the work that you're going to be doing on this budget. And in conversations I've had around town, I really hear a deep appreciation for you and your leadership. So thank you.
It's true. And I think it's important to point out again that the budget, if the budget failed, it wasn't just the admin's problem. I think that the board failed in helping it as well. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Let's go get some dinner. I guess I have to work sessions. I don't know. I never know the official rules here, but do I have a motion to close this work session? Let's just be conservative about it.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Thanks, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.